Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Now this is going to sound weird. You come to my channel, you watch my vids, you can see I've got a vast array of orchids, many of which are doing incredibly well, and I'm going to fire a load of questions at you about Phalaenopsis, because my Phalaenopsis aren't doing very well, and I don't know why. I mean, there was a time when I didn't actually care because I was just going to get rid of them all. And then during last year, I found a place that was selling nice big plants with really good root systems, you know, with nice big spikes and colourful blooms for like £2 or £5. So I got a few. And I started thinking, actually I could do with some of these around. Now, this array here, probably at least half of these are actually my daughter's, but the questions stand. And it's a case of, these are all indoors for the winter because it's just too cold in the grow room. I mean, these are warm growers basically. Having brought them indoors, they stayed out in the grow room as long as I could, because everybody says to induce the spikes you need the drop in temperature as the summer fades into autumn towards winter. Give them a drop in temperature for a while and you'll induce the spikes. Well, did it hell. So just random questions. I'm just going to pick up a couple and just have a look over them and give me your advice. I look at some of your Phalaenopsis and I see spikes with a dozen blooms on. Not 2. That's a pathetic spike for such a large plant. 2. Now there's no way I bought that with a spike on it with 2 blooms. So first question, when you buy what I call store-bought plants, you know, in your do-it-yourself place, in your supermarket, in the garage, wherever, you know, wherever people just sell loads of Phalaenopsis with lovely blooms on, and you pick them up and you bring them home, when those spikes go over, do they seem to take a long time before they spike again? In other words, they've come out of the nursery ready to sell from virtually perfect environments, and then they come into our environments which are not so perfect. Some are a long way from perfect maybe, and some are not so far off, but they're not the conditions they were being grown in to get them to flower like that. Do you find that the first blooming takes a while? And do you also find that those first spikes, or 2, if you manage to get 2, are never as good as what was there before? I think the answer to that is probably yes and yes. But, you know, there's a lot of good Phalaenopsis growers out there watching my channels about all the other sorts of orchids, and it just may seem odd for me to ask about the humble Phalaenopsis. Well, humble it might be, but if they're not growing well, I like to throw things out and, you know, see what other people think. Now, that's not my plant. It's growing well. It's, you know, the leaves are getting bigger as it goes along. Slightly misshapen leaf. I mean, that's one of my daughters. It's got a good, everything's soaking wet at the moment. I've just watered them. That's why they're out, basically. I mean, it's got a good root system on it. It's growing well. Has it flowered since we got it? Has it hell? Not a light. It's just sitting there growing leaves, which is good. The more leaves you get, the more energy the plant's got, the more likely it is to give you a better spike. I mean, that's my Sedera japonica. I mean, some people have a lot of trouble growing that. It's growing okay, you know, but no spikes, not a light. That's that one. Now, I've got a feeling with that one, because that's actually a species, I could be keeping it too dry. So, yeah, open question, would you agree? You know, should that stay a bit moister than becoming... I mean, the way I'm looking after these get totally dry before they get any water. They don't get a huge big gap. They don't stay dry for a week or anything silly, but I do let them dry right off. And they are in a relatively warm environment that is low on humidity. Let me just get that out of the way first. I mean, this is one of my daughters. The plant's got nice leaves on it. You know, it's got some good roots, no spikes. That's one of my giant ones that had the, you know, trouble is I didn't tag these, so I haven't got a clue which plant goes with which blooms, if you see what I mean. If I'd put a tag in there, deep purple with pale edges, I'd know which plant each time. But until they bloom, I can't tell. And at the moment, that's the only Phalaenopsis blooms I've got. We will get to some buds in a minute. Okay, but again, you know, that's a reasonable root system down in there. It's practically filling the pot. It hasn't grown a new leaf for a while, and that would have been one that I got sort of towards the end of the summer in bloom at that time. So maybe I'm just a bit too hopeful with these. That one we've already looked at. It's a pot full of roots, and out of my sort of summer bought Phalaenopsis, boy did this one get a slug problem. It's because I just ignore the flipping things, but it's the only one that's bloomed, and two. It did have 4 and 2 blasted. That could be the dry atmosphere in here. Might even answer my own questions as we go along. It's another one of my daughters. It's growing well. It's got a nice new leaf. That hasn't bloomed for 2 years. You know, she's beginning to get, is it worth keeping these things? If they're not going to bloom, you know, that's my sweet memory. Now, that's grown that new leaf. That's all it's done so far. I think that had 2 spikes. Yeah, that had 2 spikes on it when I got it. And I got that last, I think I got that last April at the RHS show. If that's different, I'll put a pop-up as we go along. So it's grown a lovely new leaf, larger than all of the others. And so far, that's all it's done. It's got some reasonable roots in there. You know, it's not like these are short on roots, a lot of these. Some of them are, mind. Mini Phalaenopsis. Pain in the flipping arse to get going again. These come, when they're sold, generally speaking in the UK, in a solid mass of broken down sphagnum moss. And their roots are dying, if not dead. And boy do they take some flipping recovering. They just don't seem to have the vigour that the larger versions have. But I mean, you know, that one's grown some roots. It has got some. It's not dead. And it's okay. And quite honestly, I didn't expect that to bloom. So you can go to one side. This is, this is one of my daughters. That's Equestris. And again, that was in bloom when it was bought. And it hasn't bloomed since. It's pushed out 2 new leaves, this one. And now it's pushed out a skinny leaf, which normally means it's not quite right. Again, that's a species, I believe. It has some roots. I wouldn't say that's a brilliant root system, but it's got some. So, you know, the plant can't be totally dehydrated. But maybe, again, I'm just keeping it too dry. Maybe it should get watered a bit more often. Anybody got that one? Shout. And then we come on to this one. The plant's sort of growing okay. Another one of my daughters. She'll go mad. Slug's taking a chunk out of that one. But this one's produced a spike. What's that supposed to be? That's pathetic. It's just not right. You know, that should be thicker. It should be out here. It should have, you know, 2 buds, 2 buds, 2 buds, 2 buds, 2 buds, 1 bud. Not that. Something not right. That's not what they should be doing. Another mini phal. Again, this was the solid mass of stuff. It is pushing some roots, but no expectation for blooms on that. It hasn't even grown a new leaf yet, so give them a chance. This was one of my mini phals, and this fell out of the pot last time I watered it, and at that point I realised it only had 1 root left, and it was potted too high. So I've sunk that down in a bit, and it is a little bit dehydrated, but you know, you can expect that if it's only got 1 root left. Let's hope it now grows some more. Another one of my daughters. Nice looking little plant. Nice new leaf. Doesn't look like that new leaf's going to be quite as big as the other one, but it hasn't finished growing yet. Yeah? And, you know, it has some roots again. It's trying to recover from having virtually none. But it's pushing on. No expectations for blooms there. Now this, my daughter's dead chuffed with. This was a kiki on her last flower spike, and that was her own flower spike. Yeah? And as the blooms started to fade, it produced a kiki. Now, okay, it's wonky, because to actually get it in a pot, these aerial roots had to stay out or they would have broken. That's why it's sort of over on its side. And the Kiki's got a spike on. Yeah? This spike here, this is the mother plant effectively, and this is the Kiki. It's had 2 leaves die on it and pushed out 2 more. So it's still maintaining a 3-leaf plant with some roots, and it's now decided to bloom. Now, given that that's a Kiki, that's acceptable perhaps, if they don't blast. Another one. This one was bought in my innocence, being greedy, because I looked at it and thought, oh, there's 2 plants in that pot. Well, actually there isn't. There is a mother plant and a basal Kiki. Now, advice. Should those 2 be separated, or are they happy to stay as 2 separate plants? When I got this had 6 spikes on with a minimum of 6 blooms on each spike. And it's just starting to come into spike now. That's not what I'd call a spike. That's what I'd call pretty poor effort, mate. And your mate round here looks like it's already blasted its buds. Yeah? There's another nubbing coming right down in there, so it is going to try again. But, you know, is this wrong? You Phalaenopsis people, is it bad to keep a basal Kiki that's grown almost to the size of the mother plant? The problem with that basal Kiki is, if I take it off, I'll lose it. I don't think it's got its own root system. So it's living off of the mother plant. That doesn't probably sound like a good idea. Right, another one here. This is another non-bloomer. It's not a bad plant. It's got some roots. It's grown new leaves, but no bloom. That's mine. That's a recovery. Don't worry about that. That's in moss. That's got 1 root. Here's another little tiny plant. My daughter loves this one because it's got variegated leaves, but it's been doing weird things with the leaves. The previous leaves, you know, you got all odd sizes, and then it did this long skinny one, but it does have a variegated edge, and then it did that one. Lost its variegation and didn't grow to the size or shape of that one. Now it's pushing another one up, and it's got a spike. That's not a spike. Go away and have some more lessons. That's not good. This is another little, was a mini phal, one of the ones I just picked up because I like the blooms. No expectations from that at the moment. Get yourself a decent root system, then we'll think about blooms and stuff. Another big plant. This plant's been around, again, this was one of the summer ones. I think the same slug had all of these because they were all in the same place. And the trouble is with Phalaenopsis, when it's one of your top leaves that get holes and that sort of damage, oh, which one is it? I can't find it now, but it's like shredded the underside of one of the leaves and taken all the sort of surface off of it. But it hasn't gone rotten or anything. You know, pushed out this new leaf. It's growing. But should I be expecting a spike on that, given that it had 2 big vigorous spikes last summer? Should I be expecting a spike yet? Or should I be thinking, let's get another good sized leaf first? You are the guys with the experience, not me. And this one we've already had, I think this was the one with the, yeah, look at that. Slug literally took all the cell surface off of the bottom of that leaf, little tyke, and some chunks out of the top. But at least that one's done a spike, but it's not what I would call a decent Phalaenopsis spike. So have a think about this lot. You know, if you buy a store-bought thing with 1, 2 spikes on, with loads of wonderful blooms, nice big size and everything, loads of colour and everything like that, would you expect it to bloom within a year? Or do you think it would need to grow 2 or 3 new leaves through a season before it would be ready to bloom again? You know, in other words, have those spikes almost depleted the plant's strength, which is what I believe. So have a think. I'll probably have to brighten this one up artificially because I'm indoors with the electric light on, which is not good for filming. Looks all right on the screen, but I need to get it on the big screen first. So yeah, a few general questions on Phalaenopsis. Generally, really, it's more expectations from my point of view. Am I expecting too much too soon? And should I be more patient? Yeah, like that's going to happen. Okay, if you can help, please do. Chuck the comments in. They're always welcome, even if they're derogatory. There's a nice big word, but I have had my third coffee. Okay, cheers for that then, and see you again next time. Thanks for dropping by.